Hi, let me introduce myself. My name is Jonah. And I live in a small countryside village, half an hour away from the nearest town. I currently live with my 3 children, my wife and my little dog named Jack. I'm going to leave my wife and children's names out of it for obvious reasons. Anyway, recently I had gotten into an accident which involved me falling from height. I had broken my ankle, although now fully recovered. The accident has left me with a bit of a limp, so for the last year I've spent most of my time inside of the house. So apart from my family who I live with, I haven't really been in contact with anyone else. There would usually be a couple of people who would visit occasionally, like my mother, my grandma, and your average day-to-day salespeople looking to sell you something. Oh yeah, the postman. But apart from that, there hasn't really been a whole lot that has happened this year. So when I received a phone call from my brother, I was taken by surprise. See, I have not seen or heard from my brother in about 2 years since he moved away to the city. So I was equally excited and shocked to find out he had moved back and was now living in a place near me close to town. I don't want to mention my brother's name, so let's call him Pete. Pete had been texting me for about an hour now, and I knew it wouldn't be long before I had gotten the famous text from him which read, "Let's meet at the roundabout, bro?" I replied, "Yep, how long?" He replied, 20 minutes, bring dogs. I sent back the last message between us that said, "Okay bro, see you there." I was very excited to see my brother, so wasting no time I put on my coat, placed Jack's little harness over his neck, said goodbye to my family, closing my front door behind me. Sure, Pete said 20 minutes, but I could hardly wait to see him, and I just wanted to get there early. So I walked through the park, leading me to what always feels like the longest street in the world. It is a long street, but it's only one, and at the end is the roundabout. I don't know why, but me and Pete have always made it our meetup place ever since I can remember. Me and Jack get halfway, and by this point you can see the roundabout. It must be a brother thing, because I could see the silhouette of Pete and his dog Rex in the distance. He must have been thinking the same, because we was both early. And like always, we would act silly whistling as we get closer to each other. The dogs would be jumping around, waggling their tails as I come face to face with Pete, giving each other the famous fist bump. With all the hellos out the way, we wasted no time in deciding where we was going to walk. Pete suggested we take a walk through another park we used to always go to, and later on he would show me his new place. So I of course agreed. We walked around the whole park a couple of times, we threw balls to our dogs, and then we made our way down to the river at the side of the park. It felt so good to catch up with him. We was having such a good time we didn't even realize how late it had gotten. It was now around 12 o'clock at night, so Pete suggested we go back to his place for a while. So I of course agreed. Yeah, let's go. So we headed for his place near town. We finally arrived at Pete's place, met by a solid gray door. We opened the door and had to walk down sort of like a corridor that then led to a staircase inside of another door. We walked up the stairs right to the top, and finally we went inside Pete's flat. My first impressions of Pete's flat was I couldn't believe how cozy it felt. I was so glad, because my ankle ached and we had walked so far tonight I couldn't wait to chill out. I didn't tell my brother about my ankle because I didn't want him to think we couldn't walk far. Anyway, we played some Xbox together, watched a movie, and my brother even went through the trouble of ordering us both a takeaway. The time went so fast, and it had finally come to the time of the night where we both was very tired. So I put my coat back on and placed my dog's harness on and lead around his neck. Pete told me I should stop the night, but it was 3:30 in the morning and I just wanted my bed, so I said, "No thanks, I'm going to go, bro." I thanked him for a great night and said goodbye to his dog Rex. Looking back now, I wished I had stopped. So closing Pete's door behind me, I make my way down the stairs with my dog, walk out the first door leading me into the corridor. Jack began barking furiously. He never really barks at people. Just dogs normally, unless it's Rex, Pete's dog. There was a woman sitting between the exit door and the corridor wall. She seemed to have black eyes. I don't know if it was because it was so dark, but her eyes looked pitch black. She had long hair and her clothes gave her an appearance that made her look like she was homeless. She really made me feel uneasy as I looked at her, thinking to myself, how am I supposed to get out without going past her? Then out of nowhere she spoke to me, muttering only a few words. Even her voice seemed scary and I could barely hear her. I replied to her, "What did you say?" She then spoke again to me. This time I heard her. She said, "I stay here." I told her it's not my place, but my brother lives here and it should be fine by him for one night. She then asked me, "Can I come with you?" I told her I have to go meet my family. She started to laugh, tilting her head like a dog would. She sounded freaky. That laugh was enough to put hair on anyone's arm. I was thinking about taking up Pete's offer of staying at his house, but I immediately remembered how my brother has always been a deep sleeper. And I knew if I turned back and went back up the stairs to Pete's and he didn't answer, I'm screwed. Not to mention I'm cornered if who or whatever she was decided to follow. I felt a lot safer having my dog with me. I don't know what I would do if I never had him. So I picked him up and sort of leapt to the exit door and somehow made it out. It was one of those feelings that I felt if she touched me I would be killed. Now out on the street again, my main mission was to get home, eat a bowl of cereal and go to sleep. So I began walking, my eyes never leaving the solid gray door, until I reach a point where I can just about see the door. Then I saw the door open. I waited thinking my eyes might just be playing tricks on me. She walked out. I could see her looking about like she was looking for me. I was terrified. I knew I had a couple of streets in the roundabout before I would even reach the street that felt like the longest street in the world. She started to slowly walk in my direction. So I began to walk faster and faster until I came to the corner. I took one last look. She seemed to be walking at a faster pace with every step. And once around the corner I wasted no time at all. I ran all the way till I reached mine and Pete's meetup place at the roundabout. The worst part now was my ankle was starting to really hurt and I still had to walk down the one last street before I would reach the park. The park was fine because it was lit up and there was a camera installed there. It just felt safe, like sort of a home base type of place. So after resting for a few minutes at the roundabout I started to walk and I was having thoughts like I've lost track of her, she could be close. Why did I stop? I ignored my thoughts and kept walking. I looked behind me and I swear I saw her ducking behind a nearby car. The closer I got to the end of the road I began to get overconfident, laughing and whistling to myself. When all of a sudden my dog started to bark at a red van across the road. I picked my dog up and ran. I never looked behind me once. I managed to reach the end of the street and onto the lit up park. The park was so lit up you were able to see the dark street a lot better from there. I could see her standing next to a tree. She knew I could see her now and I knew she could see me. I slowly walked backwards. I didn't want to lose sight of her this time. And more importantly, I didn't want her to know where my house was. So walking backwards I got further and further away from her. She never moved once. I finally got out of view and back to my house, and the first thing I did was text my brother and told him what had happened. I of course knew he wouldn't have read it until the next day. The next morning I was woken up by the sound of a notification on my phone. It was Pete. He had sent me a message that made me as pale as a ghost. The message read, "I didn't tell you, but I had hidden cameras installed all over the place, including the corner near the exit. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, bro, but I forgot about the cameras." The cameras showed Pete coming out of the door when he first came to meet up with me at the start of the night. Me and Pete entering the door, and then finally me leaving Pete's at the end of the night. There was no footage of the woman. There was no neighbors, nothing. I told Pete I would never visit him after dark ever again.